808.
Okay.
And right now we can't take any official action. We have yourself. Rope is here.
Tom, I'll interrupt just quickly, if you don't mind. So Rule 33. I knew it was there. I just want to make sure we use the right reference. When a quorum of regular members of any committee of the county board are not present in the meeting of that committee, the chairman of the county board is present and serves as a voting member for said committee. There you go.
Got it.
That's the one I was looking for.
All right.
I guess I read it for a reason. I read it.
And I'll add that to my folder of things I bring to the meeting. We're called to order. Roll call is myself, Joe, and Dan is filling in as the county board chair to provide a forum. Board Rule 33. Okay, then I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda and approve the minutes from the May 21st meeting. Moved by Joe, second by Dan, all in favor? Aye, opposed, hearing none, motion is carried. Public comment? The Childs are here. Are you guys here for public comment?
Yep.
Okay, it's all yours. Floor is yours.
Gonna give you guys an update on the campground and where we're at right now. What we ended up doing last year towards the end of the season. Or I guess it was middle of the season, we finally got our 800 amp service in. WPS turned it on, so we do have 800 amp. We have it set up for 16 sites with power right now. There is, I guess that would have been last year's setup. This year, last year we were supposed to get our plumbing in, but with the rain in the fall, the plumber couldn't make it, so it ended up coming in spring this year. So we got in April, we got 24 sites set up with water. They're all run. We had to, deal with engineering, things like that, but that's all done. So those are in. Right now, we're at the point of we're working on landscaping, trying to fix it up. Obviously, the rain's not helping us. We can't, where the trenches were, you drive a tractor on it, you sink. So it's kind of I gotta wait for it to dry up. So opening, we're still hoping to open yet this year. Obviously, that's the plan. We wouldn't stick all the money in it if we didn't plan on opening. I guess we're shooting for July 4th. Whether or not that happens, that's all weather permitting and, you know what I mean, inspections and things like that, make sure everything goes smoothly. So I know we asked for an extension last year. We got a year, so that'll be up. I want to say it was September, if I remember correctly. We're not going to meet everything on that, on what you guys have. I'm going to tell you ahead of time. We're not going to meet 40 sites and the pathos, and you know what I mean? We have 20, if we get, right now what we have is 16 sites, seasonal sites. We're going to have 5 tent sites. That's all been approved by the Department of Agriculture. That's where we're going to be, and that's what we're shooting for. So I guess a lot of also what I'm looking at is when the time does come, and my time is up with the extension, if there's any type of grace or any type of, if we can at least reduce how much I owe on that, instead of 50,000, if we can do something, when that time comes. But that's also something to talk about. Obviously, if I was just gonna pay 50,000, I would have just said, well, then I'm not doing the campground. You know what I mean? So hopefully everybody understands where we're at, and things didn't go as smoothly as we thought. So that's where we're at with that right now. I don't know if there's any questions I can answer for anybody.
What is their time extension? Is it through September?
I think it was end of September. I think it was
here.
this year. This year.
Obvious progress, and it's not going to meet all of the criteria that were set, but there is progress.
Yeah, and we do have the office building there. That we knocked out. We ended up knocking down much more than we thought. We thought we could save some buildings. They were just too far gone. And I didn't spend, obviously, when I was looking at it, I didn't spend time, like, I'm a builder by trade, but I didn't spend time digging in the walls and saying, oh yeah, that's all rotted out. It was just one of those things where a guy thought, well, I can fix it. I know Scott had come out and had a look at it too, before he left. But yeah, everything's coming along.
Very slow.
It is, there's more, it's a lot harder than what I expected, put it that way. There's more to it. I thought that 3 years would have been an easy thing. It was.
So given what you know now, when do you think you would hit those milestones?
For 40 sites, it would probably be, it's gonna be for sure 2 years. For sure 2 years. My goal is to get these 16 sites up and going, expanding that to the 24. I don't know how many of you have actually seen that. Did you go out there? Yeah. Okay, so those back sites, when you drive all the way down and back, that's where our seasonals are. That's where we're starting. There's actually 24 there, but it was undersized. The electric was undersized, so I could only do it with the electric that was there. I could only do 16, so I got to make another run. But I did put all 24 in for water, you know, ahead of time. Obviously, if I'm paying to get it engineered, I wanted to do it all right away. So those 24, that's short term. Get those 16, finish the 24, make another electrical run out there. And then move to the sites across from our home street, or the pole barns that are there. There's, that would have made, 52 sites, I believe, 51 or 52 sites. Once we get those up and going, but like I said, that's secondary to the 24. The goal is to get 24 right away, or 16 right away, move it to 24, and then start on the other. So I would say it'll be, to make those milestones, it'll be all of 2 years.
From now.
For the 40 sites, yeah, from now.
Could you, September is the date, but you put something in a proposal in writing for us for the committee?
Sure.
And get it to us so we can act on it before the September deadline?
Sure.
And then we'll know what your plan is and
Yeah.
where you are now, where you plan to be next year, the year after.
Yeah.
So we can have a
Yeah,
kind of a
realistically,
roadmap of what you're really looking to do.
right.
Finance committee would have to take action because they have set that September date. So if the committee doesn't take action, then what?
Right, and that was the reason we wanted to come in and give an update, was I don't want it to be too late, and then you guys say, well, nothing we can do now.
Are you open?
No, we're trying.
When will you open?
I'm hoping mid-July, I'm hoping, you know, weather permitting. I don't want to leave a mud hole there. So I could force it open right now. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there and say, well, it's a dump and I don't want to camp there, you know? So,
And I finally wants to be in the campground business.
By September, it'd be about 50%. Your whole total project.
I guess, yeah, you could say that it'd be 21 sites. We'd be looking at, you know, they wanted 40 minus the bathhouse. We're not gonna have a bathhouse up this year. But yeah, it'd be roughly 50%.
So is your scope, other than, you said you don't have the bathhouse up, has the scope changed at all? I mean, your objective when you're all done is still the same as what?
Yeah, my
Oh, yeah.
objective is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have full intentions on opening what we originally planned on opening. It's just between the cost, finding people to do it, you know, there's a lot
Okay,
more to it than what we ever expected.
What is the county out on any of this? I mean, what were we supposed to receive in September? What's the difference if we extend it?
I don't remember the agreement per se.
It was
but you mentioned
50,000.
50,000 if they didn't meet thresholds. So I don't know that would be, we are out 50,000.
We're not out 50,000, that was the penalty, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
penalty for not, improving it.
What I'm getting at is, if my memory serves, this is going back quite a while now, we aren't out anything.
Right.
I mean, those were put in, I believe, penalties.
Yes, so we tax deeded it, we had some amount,
Right.
you paid something for
Yeah.
it. I think that covered that little bit. But to get the best use out of it and to make it the best agreement, that agreement of we're gonna develop it to 40 sites and what
Yeah.
else was added to it with the $50,000, we'll call it penalty.
Yeah,
I mean, my attitude is as long as real progress is being made, and there is a legitimate effort, and the county isn't out anything, I don't know why we would want to penalize them.
thank you, sir, sounds excellent.
So I will work with you over the summer.
thank you.
We should come up with a written update and plan for the next couple of years and probably come back for the August meeting of this group.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Great, perfect, thank you.
There's real progress being made.
Anyone can stop and come out.
Yeah, anytime, anybody wants to stop and see it, you guys are all welcome to stop out anytime, see what we're doing. Been kind of updating Edith on the progress too, because she likes, she likes to know. I had to go to town, we had to go to town of Pierce and get the obviously conditional use permit and all that stuff too, so I like to keep everybody up to date where we are.
Well, you were smart enough, I'm not like some of the delinquent taxes where you wait until it's, so we're ready to
2 years old.
take possession.
No, you don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, we don't want to be in that position.
And actually, I don't know, too, so every step of the way when they've been close to missing or missing, they've come in on their own without having to chase them down, and to me, that speaks volumes.
Responsibility, thank you.
Yes, thank you guys.
Okay, thanks for
With the buildings that were beyond repair.
Yeah.
Were there intended uses for those buildings that,
Originally, yes, so the main building that was there, it was when you pulled in, there was actually it used to be, it was a tavern, it was a bathhouse, it was a washroom, we intended on fixing it and reusing it. It was past the point of fixing, so we tore 3/4 of it down. I saved a wing that came off, and that is now our office building. But with that, we had to abandon all of that plumbing, all of that water, you know what I mean? So it was
Starting over.
yeah, started over.
Scratch.
Essentially, we started over from scratch. We thought everything was good. It was not. So, that's where we're at. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in. We're waiting to talk with you.
Take care.
I should have asked this before we got here, but without objection, I'd like to have Renee's, so she, on the UW extension on the agenda, so she can give her presentation and get out of here.
I'm used to staying through really long meetings, that's okay.
So without objection, we have Renee do hers, and then we can get back to Scott and the rest of the agenda. That's all right.
Scott's got lots of.
Here, Renee, you're on.
As much time as you need.
Well, our extension committee met on Wednesday and the committee approved the grants to receive the grant. I don't know how much you know a little bit about the grant from the memo. This is a Department of Health and Human Services, Wisconsin DHS grant. It's ARPA funding and there's a Medicaid component to it, but the easy way for us to work with this grant is to address social isolation and loneliness. It's always a mouthful to say that. But really what we're getting at is the heart of loneliness in the community. And I requested just a modest amount of little over $10,000 for the size of our population here in the county. Requests could have been, we could have requested up to $100,000 for these proposals. And the past year and a half, I've been working with a coalition we formed about a year and a half ago with initial funding from the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation. And we formed what's called the Aging Friendly Kewaunee County. So trying to put a positive spin on, oh, these poor older people that need all this help instead of it being more of a, we're trying to be age friendly here in Kewaunee County. We know that our population is aging, and what can we do to support older individuals? One of the focuses of this grant is to really identify ways that people can be more active in their communities, continue to volunteer. And as most of you know, filling positions on committees gets more and more challenging as people kind of age out of committees after decades of sitting in the same board roles for many years, and then trying to fill those vacancies and find new people who are passionate and interested in investing in their community. These type of committees, county boards, civic organizations, in their churches and their communities. So with this grant, the idea is that our coalition of people that meet will identify different ways to stay active and volunteering. And a large part of what I've been doing this past year is working closely with Josh Visti, the public information officer here, and he's very talented at making short videos that reach the rest of the public in a kind of interesting way. And we're highlighting people in the community that we're calling mastery makers. So people that are over the age of 60 who are doing a ton of volunteering and have volunteered for a long time. I should probably interview all of you and make a short video with most of you too, as I see your faces over the years and the different ways that you're volunteering. But then we're highlighting those individuals and trying to get the word out, not only just to kind of give some recognition to that individual as a volunteer, but also to spark interest in other people to say, oh, I'd like to do that too, or I could be volunteering in that way. It also brings awareness to the activity that they're doing. So for example, one of our volunteers has been volunteering for years in Kewaunee in the old Union State Bank building on the corner downtown on Ellis Street. She's volunteering, and that's called a thrift shop. And we still have a lot of people in this community that, even though that thrift shop has been there for years, don't know that there's a thrift shop that we all can shop at and get really good deals on great clothing and great supplies and bedding and housewares and baby items. And so that's another way is to promote that awareness of a resource in our community for families and for individuals. So the grant has a really short kind of time frame to it. It needs to be spent out by the end of March. And I'm confident we'll be able to do that. I'll probably meet with Jeremy and Josh again in the if after your approval to talk about how we can take a pretty large chunk of the funds and invest that into supplies for the things that Josh needs to make those videos, because you know, wear and tear when you're taking video equipment around. And it's hard on equipment, so we're hoping to get some new equipment for Josh so he can keep that portion of the video making going. And maybe I'll have a conversation with Ross too about some other supplies that might be needed to promote and continue this effort. So it's a way to kind of bring the funds back into the community, both outside the walls here and as well as you know, kind of keep some support here too in this building for being able to continue the work. Any questions?
Are there any matching funds required from the county?
There are no matching funds required, which is,
Right.
yeah.
The other one was, you talking about a real focus of this videos to communicate. Is that what people are doing, or what are the different ways other groups are using this money? Have you looked around?
As far as I know, that's one of the more unique ways that individuals from other counties are using the funding. That they're, you know, the sky's really the limit with what other counties are choosing to do. When I say counties, it's not necessarily it's their county group, but it's a nonprofit or another related human service type agency that's managing the funds. Some are doing social media type outreach to their community. Yeah, so
But those both are communication.
yes.
Is that what it's focused on? I mean, is that what it's for? Or it seems like
There's
a jump
there's
from.
an engagement component too, so I just kind of highlighted that video piece of it because there's probably more of an expense to do that part of it. Some of the other components involve, I work closely with our ADRC over here, and annually they run a senior resource fair. So part of it's, you know, just encouraging more attendance at the resource fair, boosting that event. We've also held a volunteer event, volunteer expo in Algoma in partnership with the Violence Intervention Program. So it's, again, trying to get more people involved in those events and attend those. And that doesn't always mean maybe social marketing of those events. It might mean, you know, going out one-on-one and visiting some of the different centers or visiting with different health providers that could be referring people to those programs.
Good question. Great program. Now I would entertain a motion to approve accepting the grant from DHS for $10,413 for the utility extension.
No move.
By Dan, second by Doak. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. Carried. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you for your time, for following up in a year and letting you know how it's all going.
Because of the new financial requirements, also and all that stuff, you have to be.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, moving on. Discussion on the bug tussle proposal for broadband project, phase 2 project. Scott,
Probably just come over by the table, would that be easier?
whatever you want, your Zoom.
Morning, sir.
You have in front of you some materials. I'm not sure if other materials were given to you or not. What Bug Tussle is looking to try to do is something that we've done previously with Kewaunee County. There is a slight difference, but what we're wanting to do is continue to do broadband expansion within Kewaunee County by extending the middle mile fiber backbone within the county. That will allow for more towers to increase their capability as well as allow customers that are along that middle mile to receive service, as well as when the beam funding really starts to come into play, then we can branch off of that middle mile fiber to get fiber to the home. So how we've done it in the past is we had 2 projects with Bug Tussle. One was for towers, that was back in 2020. The county had agreed to basically do the match of $960,000 to match the PSC's grant amount. And that was a loan that we loaned to Bug Tussle at 3% interest. We then a year later did something for fiber in 2021, and that was also a loan to Bug Tussle in the amount of $1.4 million. We did also have one in 2022 that was awarded, and again would have been a loan to Bug Tussle for 1.3, but Bug Tussle had elected to return that grant award back because there was some discrepancies on the application, and instead of going through a whole bunch of hoops and machinations, we just decided to return the amount back. So we're looking to, again, do that project as well as add a little bit more into the Knightsville area. We look at this project costing roughly about $6 billion. How this is different than what we've done, than what Kewaunee County has done in the past, is that we would, Bug Tussle would be requesting that Kewaunee County participate in conduit bonding. So conduit bonding, how this, and I'm gonna do it just well enough to probably screw it up, but it's also in your memo there. We have over 3 different debt issues, worked with the Fond du Lac County to be the major issuer. They do a capacity of roughly about 250 billion, of which then we have participating counties that join in on that conduit bonding. How that typically works is that the county passes a resolution which basically approves their participation and a co-signing into the conduit bonding. Bug Tussle then takes over all payments of that bonding. So therefore, there is no general obligation debt on the books for the county, and there is no indebtedness to the county at that present time, or at any time as long as we continue to make the payments. I know that previously you're looking at a potential industrial revenue bond through Elda Farms for an RNG project. But these are slightly different conduit bonding issues that has to do with taxable and non-taxable effects. of which I know Linda had sent something to you
This
this morning. So I guess the bigger question, or I don't want to go wax too poetic. I guess I'd much rather try to answer your questions. What we're looking at is that if in June, if the board were so inclined to approve what is the initial resolution, that does not obligate you in any way. Because it's a debt issue, we have to go through two separate votes. The first one is a simple majority. The second one, which would take place in August, would have to be 3/4. And the reason why Bug Tussle is coming to Kewaunee County to do this program is it allows us to do the bonding at a much lower rate than if we had to go to market, which therefore allows us to be able to do the project. I probably have not answered all the questions, but I'll take questions so that way I can try to explain further.
The bonds issued by Fond du Lac County,
Well, yes,
and you're asked, or the request is for us to co-sign it.
correct. In the
How much
amount
do
of
we
$6
co-sign?
million.
Okay, so our liability is limited to that $6 million.
Correct.
If you were to default on the total amount of bonds,
Okay, how would that
our
go?
risk would be for the $6 million.
Right, but so first it would go with Bug Tussle. If Bug Tussle were to not, then it would go to the parent company, Filbert Communication, which has all its subsidiaries and all of its others. Then from there, if Filbert can't do it, then the liability would come to Kewaunee County to make those payments.
That's on this page, so it's the order of
So,
payments and reviews.
but we had done a similar thing back in 2012 with Fond du Lac County and Adams County. And then we did one in 2021, 22, and 23 for various issues of 90 million, 72 million, and 58 million. We have not missed a payment, nor do we plan on doing that, because if we were to ever do that, counties are not going to do projects with us, which is not in our best long-term interest or even short-term.
What were the amounts again?
In 21, 22, and 23, it was 90 million, 72 million, and 58 million. So what happens, so that Fond du Lac County, so let's say we're doing for 250, it's not all 250 million in 1 year. They do it in tranches. And so they did it for, I think, 225 million previously, of which the 90, the 78, and the 52 made roughly 220 or something like that. So
Yeah, which other counties are participating or evaluating the being a piece of the 50 issue?
we have probably a dozen. So Fond du Lac County, of course, because they're the issuing county. We have Iowa County that will be doing it for 15 million for us. That's looking at 11 price for 15. Columbia is looking at it for 13. Jefferson is for 5. That will happen as well. Lafayette, Kewaunee, Taylor. So there's about a dozen, well over 100. If all of the counties that we're talking to for this round were to sign on and do it, it would be roughly about $120 million for this issue.
Jeremy, you talked about BEAD.
Sure.
How does any of that, what role would any of that play in this, and what impact or what factor in any decisions?
So BEAD is meant to be making the final connections to the homes. So this project being in place, hypothetically, this project being in place would be simplify and speed up the ability to apply BEAD funding to get actual fiber connected all the way through, from the large data centers to the individual homes.
And that BEAD funding that we would be applying for then, it could be with Bug Tussle, but it wouldn't have to be.
So
And they'd be able to go off of Bug Tussle's fiber if, because we don't know how those grants, what competitors there would be and what
correct.
Proposals.
Yeah, and just for clarification, for the BEAD funding, the county doesn't actually apply. If the county can choose to endorse a private ISP that would apply. As far as the relationship between the two companies, think the presumption is that the entity receiving the BEAD funding would have to work with whomever the owners in the middle mile is to get access to that. Scott may actually know more about that.
But we wouldn't know necessarily because there would be other companies potentially wanting to, you know, compete on those. So it could be Bug Tussle, but it doesn't have
Could
to
be
be.
charter, could be frontier, if I may, Mr. Chair.
I'm just trying to, because we have so many letters going
Right.
on in so many parts of this now.
So Jeremy's right, is that BEAD funding has stated that it has to be for last mile. Well, if you don't have the middle mile, you can't get to the home. And so I'm putting on my salesman hat right now, so I'll be honest, is that if you don't have the middle mile, it's tough to do the last mile, and that's what we're trying to do because it sets that up. Now, with that, with BEAD, the county is not required to endorse Bug Tussle. They're not. They could endorse a project with charter, or they could possibly, depending on what the projects are endorse multiple projects. Now, what we have done and what we've always wanted to do is we have no problem. There are plenty of providers that like to own their fiber and their fiber only. Why? Because it's a control issue. But Kewaunee County has always been with what we call rural open access design, which means we will put the middle fiber in. And if there's another company that wants to therefore wire up a subdivision and take those customers, we're fine with that, because as from a partnership standpoint, our middle mile is still being used and those customers are being served. In fact, we're looking at doing that exact same thing with a couple of internet service providers in other counties.
And so, Jeremy, just to clarify, so the BEAD grant money, we have to have that middle mile put in.
Yeah, BEAD can't be applied without the middle.
And so the BEAD can't even be applied for, and there's no funding. None of that grant money is going to be available for the middle mile.
For the middle mile. I'm not an expert on BEAD, but I believe that to be true.
I believe
I don't know if Ross is into that part of the IEP either or not.
My understanding is that with BEAD, the middle mile might be part of it if there's an area that is underserved and somebody bids on it, AT&T bids on it, Bug Tussle bids on it, whatever service provider bids on it. If middle mile is not there, if they bid on that area, their requirement is to get that to the home. And if they can't get it to the home, that means they're going to have to supply some type of middle mile in there or some other type of transport to get that there. So
what will more than likely have to happen is BEAD will go from the middle mile to the home. But then that internet service provider will have to construct the middle mile. And so in some respects, that depending on who they are, and I don't want to speak for charter or any of the others, that may be a cost that they're willing to take on to put in the middle mile to then do the last mile into certain areas. But the middle mile would, from my understanding, would be on their dime, not on BEAD funds.
And the other caveat to this is that Kewaunee County would be divided up basically in chunks, and people can bid on those chunks. Okay, so everybody's going to be coming knocking on our door, basically asking. Let's say we get $20 million from the BEAD grant. They're going to be coming knocking on our door saying, "Hey, we want to bid on this, so we want a portion of those funds for AT&T, and a portion of those funds for Bug Tussle, and a portion of those funds for charter." It's whoever bids on those areas that are underserved.
Yes.
So then, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on this stuff, and this is all.
Neither are we.
Well, I was going to ask, what is your thought on this proposal, Ross, in relation? I mean, how it would work out for the county? And
Well, it's in my estimation, it's fairly safe. We do benefit from this because just like in previous times, we've asked for our what we call so-called wish list. Bug Tussle has been very good in providing that. If we look at dollar amounts for, different projects and stuff like that, fiber to our buildings and things like that, that stuff's very expensive. So a part of any agreement with any ISP, we have basically, here's what we would like to have within our county to help us out, like we talked about our highway departments. There's a new fuel system that's going in. There's other things that are happening even at the asphalt plant, hot mix plant. If those buildings are connected to us, that helps us tremendously. We even talked about, we would like to have a connection back to UWGB, which gets us to the top, so we can join WISNet for our internet, which saves us a ton of money. These are all types of benefits that we could potentially have with an agreement like this.
And in addition, as we had said before, is, so you're doing the bonding, we're making the payments, but because you are basically co-signing or supporting this, you get a 40 basis points, which is 0.4% of the outstanding balance. So over the course of that time, let's call that roughly 600 grand.
What is the term of the bond?
It's a 30-year bond.
And Paul, where are we at with the current ones? I know the payments are all up to date. What has been paid in versus what's left to be paid? How many years were those?
The first, well, they're both 12-year loans. The first one, I believe we have had 3 payments in made on time. So that would be 9 more to go. The second one, we've had the first payment in 2023, so 11 more years to go. The dollar amounts, it was roughly 90-some thousand, and I don't remember the payment too. Something, that's single line. I don't remember the payment.
I thought both together came up to about 90, but I can
No, the first one, no. But payments have been made once a year on time by the due date for all 4 loan payments.
We did push back the schedule.
Yes, because the work wasn't even done.
Right. They didn't want to draw on it when the work was
Right.
correct. Okay. Which makes sense. Okay, thank you.
So what does Bug Tussle get out of this? They own that fiber when they put it in?
correct.
And you charge any internet ISP if it does the last mile, you charge them for your.
Yeah, that would be true with any type of.
But you own it.
Right, you're building a network, and so what we want to do is we want to continue to build a rural fiber network throughout the state of Wisconsin. So yes, we would own it. From a county standpoint, I think, what's in it for the county? Well, it's not just the 40 basis points, but you also get, I think it's 26 strands.
24, but what does that do? Is that ours? Or
That is yours.
Oh, never mind.
What does that mean?
It basically is what it's called, is dark fiber. We control it. We can do whatever we want with that.
So as a county or as a commercial venture?
Well, basically as a county.
As a county.
We don't necessarily want to become an ISP. That's just not what.
Well, and by law, you can't.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
but you say that's an advantage. What would we use it for? This kind of communication?
communication to our other buildings, communication to potentially things within the city. It's kind of unlimited, having the ownership of dark fiber. But the also kind of interesting thing is that with ownership of fiber, you're also required to do locates and you can get thousands of locates a year for somebody that's putting in a sewer by their house and you got fiber running in front of it, which is a cost to do those locates through Digger's Hotline. But in this case, we control the dark fiber, we own the dark fiber, but Bug Tussle does all the locates for us.
And you
So
may
it doesn't
want
cost us anything.
Ross, you may want to explain the difference as to why it's important from a Luxembourg standpoint.
Well, so in most what we call data centers, we have locations that are not within, like if all of our servers are in this building and a tornado comes in and takes us out, we're done. But what fiber into Luxembourg allows us to do, we're in a different village. We're in the village of Luxembourg, which means we can split our data center up. We can duplicate our data center. And now if something happens here, all our data is in both places. So you can
24 strands is enough?
What's that?
Is 24 strands enough to do that?
With this agreement, we would probably potentially increase that. I mean, it's a negotiation.
It depends on how you split it as well,
Yeah.
because honestly, if you do 24 and you don't give each single fiber, but you split it through within the fiber,
Yeah,
you should
what
have a
we've done
ability.
so far with the agreements that we had is we've had 24 strands, which means there's 2 pairs that go to highway. There'll be 2 pairs that go to Luxembourg, 2 pairs to the city of Algoma, 2 pairs, so we get 2 pairs. So there's redundancy there. Once 24 is used up, that's where a potential negotiation with this type of agreement where we look at another 24 or whatever to other locations.
You would also be able to have the same software being used because you're on the same network. You can do a lot of municipal and county partnerships as well. You could possibly, I'm not saying you want to do this, but from your Kewaunee and the county standpoint, that could allow for better oversight of the city's IT infrastructure. You could also be using the same accounting software, various software that now you have the whole county kind of working on from the same software platform, which can have benefits as well.
Where's the Thistle make their money on it? Is it from customers?
And there's 2 different ways that we make profit. One would be, so let's stay with the fiber, because so from a fiber standpoint, if I'm now, and we do last mile as well, we have customers. So we make a profit on the customers by providing service. The second one would be, again, the rental of our middle mile fiber. If there was someone else that wanted to go to the last mile, then yes, we would charge the rent for that. Or what we could do is more of what I would call long haul. So let's say that there is a business in Kewaunee that also has another business in Shawnee. Well, if we already have that rural network, then we can provide that type of service for that business owner from Shawnee all the way to Kewaunee and keep those locations synced. Can do the same thing from Prevea or the like.
Okay.
Multiple clinics.
Or the initial foray was to put in towers.
Yep, which we did.
The more fiber we get in the ground and the more last mile installed, isn't that cannibalizing your users from the?
Yeah, yes and no. Because we have a number of that, especially in Fond du Lac, which is probably our most built out county. We have a number of folks that started on the towers, but then as fiber has gone by them, they've gone away from the towers to the fiber because they believe that is better. But towers will always be needed. And the reason why, most everyone accesses the internet wirelessly. So you have that, you have cellular service, you have the like. So while we may be cannibalizing some of our customers that were on wireless and are now to fiber, there's still enough business from a tower standpoint that we're not going to be taking those.
So you're providing cellular signals.
AT&T is.
AT&T does.
Tesla is probably,
Yeah.
they're
And that's-
making probably more money with AT&T
Well, that
on
explains-
those towers.
So you could lose some tower users that are doing just line of sight Wi-Fi.
Correct. And then again, and part of that is just all what is the comfort level for the customer? Because for a number of folks, 25 megs is just fine. But then with the advertising, everyone feels like they have to have a gig, when honestly, most people will never even come close to using a gig.
So you guys, everything you put in is underground, no overhead?
Right.
I would say nothing we've ever done, but nothing here, to my understanding, is above ground. Because again, some of that is more expensive, and of which, no, I'm gonna revise that statement. Many times when you cross rivers, you try to go across using the bridge because it's incredibly expensive to go under the river.
I hear you. Well, the only reason I ask that is because Park and Rec has to have internet over at Ski Hill
Yes,
for our equipment.
correct.
And
What we need to try to do, and that's where it's really difficult, Gary, because yeah, I continue to, is they are literally in a bowl
But it would have to be
So, like,
overhead.
even that, or what we could do, and we're looking at it, is we put a tower, we attach a high tower to the chalet, which therefore allows line of sight either to West Kewaunee or some other tower, which could give them the connection that they need.
Yeah, because I think that would be, I think it would be advantage for us to have it there. I mean, otherwise we're gonna have to look at a different service.
Correct.
They're also drilling to rock down there.
That's-
Probably even worse than going under the river.
Correct. Rock is incredibly expensive.
And right now at Winter Park, because of the less than stellar service, they've got a Starlink, which is a little pricey, but if you get busy down there and everybody's on their phone, what they have is.
Correct.
So now they're having problems with transactions because there's so much phone traffic that the transactions don't really take longer or.
It's taken them 6 times to do a credit card payment.
We are investigating, how we can get internet to that building, either from highway, its tower, or West Kewaunee.
You could
It's
cut
just-
down some trees and do some direct radio line of sights.
We don't own the land in between. If we did, it'd be easy. We could go out there and we can top trees and get it done. But we're gonna probably have to negotiate with some landowners to see if we can,
Well, one specific landowner.
well, if we go to the highway direction, if we go to the West Kewaunee direction, that's a different thing, but you know, we could erect a tower down there like we did with the highway, back in the day to get to us, to the admin center. I mean, I wouldn't think it'd have to be super tall. It just needs to be tall enough where, I mean, the West Kewaunee tower is 450 feet tall.
Right.
So, you know, if we had 20 feet, 30 feet in the air, we're probably over the top of the trees where we can get to the West Kewaunee tower.
So long as you could get line of sight, exactly.
I have a question. If we want to move on, is this fully cooked? Is this ready for a decision, or is this just information?
This is just information today. What Bug Tussle is requesting is, if possible, if the initial resolution, the first one, could be approved at the June meeting, which basically your June board meeting, June 18th. If that's possible. If it's not, then we can try to do July. But the first initial resolution is just expressing interest. Simple majority. Then the one in August, which is the approval, has to be 3/4.
Does the finance committee have to do anything prior to that?
I leave that up to county. As for us, it's just the initial resolution has to be passed and then the final
Finance, right?
Well, we'd have to.
Yeah.
We'd have to approve it and forward it to the board, where basically our involvement would be to approve the conduit funding, which to me is a little odd, because the conduit funding that I've ever been involved in, the business or industry requesting the funding uses the municipal county, city,
Yep.
whatever, to take advantage of their low interest rate in borrowing. But generally, the liability does not pass back
completely. Yep.
to the government. It stays with us.
And
This
then-
is a little bit different. We're assuming some liability here.
And the whole reason why is because the we could do that. We could do it that way because in the law, it allows for it. But the US Treasury has not set down the rules. And since there's no rules, we can't really do it. So we're doing it slightly different than that. This is a taxable event, not a non-tax.
So if you're going ahead of the June 18th meeting, finance would have to meet prior to that meeting. To approve, right?
And this
and
is
is that-
also on the agenda for the executive meeting on Monday.
And is that enough time for Mr. Geppo to research all of this different financing and make sure that we're,
I mean, are we on a strict timetable here, or does it have to be June, August? Can it be July, September? Can
It can be July, August. We are issuing the bonds on, in September. So could it be July, August? It could be July, August, but August is where it would have to be.
But with all the discussion about the towers and stuff that Russ was just talking about, are the technical details fully settled right now or not?
You
I'm
mean
not sure
the,
what you're.
you mean the Kewaunee wish list?
No, I'm
Or-
just saying, we had this discussion, we kind of got in the weeds here about tower height and drilling and rock.
Oh, as for where we want to do the middle mile fiber, I thought that had been supplied. I will get that to the.
I don't know, I'm just asking because there was discussion here, I don't know if we have it.
But it does have a project scoped out that they would use the funds for.
So if we wish, if we, you know, I don't think the June 18th is a possibility. I don't know that, Mr. Defo, obviously, it all seems pretty straightforward, but we need to make sure that this has been properly reviewed. Normally, we try not to meet in July, but I don't know that that's going to be possible because, you know, there'll eventually need to be a, appointment for a supervisor. And then also, so if we had that and then we had this on the July agenda, that would justify certainly having that July meeting.
A couple of the brass tacks that haven't been come up in the discussion yet that I just want to provide the board. Major benefits is, you know, better middle mile access, in preparation for bead or anything else throughout the kind of, southern, south central, southwestern part of the county, as well as up in Dykesville. Also, that would allow for some redundancy. So, if there's a break in the fiber or somebody, you know, there's for some reason, part of the network becomes compromised, you can then network traffic through the other route. So, you know, more redundancy, more reliability of service. And then on the you know, potential drawback side, with the amortization schedule, the county would be on the hook for up to $3 million of the debt as far into the future as about 2046. So it would be, that liability would be out there for a while. It's up to the board, and more in Paul's wheelhouse than mine to assess the relative risk of what that means.
So we would need Mr. Defo and Paul.
And we are more than
Debt
willing.
plus interest, Paul? So debt plus interest?
I was talking about principal rate.
But I mean, if there's a default down the road.
We're gonna make the
debt-
payments.
Debt plus interest.
Well, there's a lot of information that's provided, a lot of it's in here. The email this morning, I scanned over it. I will say that those have been talking about, and it came up today about taxable, non-taxable. From our perspective, it doesn't matter. I do know that if we co-sign, the rate will be lower, which makes perfect sense. This one's 30 years, not the usual 20. The conduit request from Elma Farms may be coming in July anyways. We might be meeting in July for that one. They had July or August as an estimate.
I think we're going to be meeting in July regardless.
Yeah. So I think it's a good idea. I mean, there's a lot of information that I haven't gotten to yet. Completely. I've read through some stuff once. But
I think it's unreasonable to expect anybody to have, you know, all of this reviewed. I mean, obviously Corporation Council has to review things for us and Paul as well. I think July is maybe realistic.
I don't think it's a bad idea for the board to hear the request now and have time. But to expect them to vote may or may not be.
It should be presented in June. If we're going to be looking at this in July, it should be presented at the June meeting, but it would not be a matter for action. I mean, there's no way that the board members could, and any of this could be prepared for June 18th.
The other thing is that this all has to go through bond council as well, and that process on our end hasn't started yet, so. I don't know what their turnaround is gonna be either, so I can't really say whether we're ready or not.
Well,
To the extent that I would have to, or bond council would have to advise the board to any degree on this. This is a different type of conduit bond than we've done in the past, and there is risk attached to it, and the risk is significant, so I think there's, I shouldn't say the risk is significant, the amount is significant. So I think with that, it may not be a bad idea that if we have questions about that, to have bond council answer those questions.
No, so there are two votes. The first vote doesn't commit you, it just says we're interested. So that's a lesser, I guess, than the final vote saying, yes, we're willing to do this.
yeah,
And we
That's a
can definitely
consideration
put
as
you in contact with a variety of counties that have done this in the past and what their experience is.
so Tussle, though, it's kind of like Elm Farms, you know, they don't really want us to take a vote and say, oh yeah, we're interested. And then turn around and then review it and decide, oh, no,
It's
no.
like a wrench, you know.
Oh, it does,
It's
but
happened
it's not,
there.
it's not really the way to go about things. All right,
And if there's other questions, please feel free to contact me. Or if there's more information.
We will put this back on our July finance agenda and then it will come up for the board on the 16th of July. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, in the packet, there are financials and overtime reports and medical nettles. Does anybody have any questions on those?
I had two questions. On the overtime. I'm asking, I guess this is directed to Paul. The trend on the sheriff is, looks like it's gonna go over budget if we're only paying considerable, and I think it's just due to staffing.
Happening, so
Happening.
he's
So what
over
is-
on overtime, but he's under on actual wages.
Does any action have to be done at like committee level to address that?
Not right now, usually in October, November-ish, he'll say, here's what we budgeted for, and it didn't work out exactly that way, so we're gonna make some adjustments.
Usually it's a move.
From one to
Move
the other,
what-
yeah,
all right.
wages to overtime is and that's been every single year.
Yes, sir. So nothing now.
Not right now.
The second question was about the number, just on the insurance. Am I seeing things, but the number of, large claimants went significantly down?
At this point in the year, I think we're routinely in this area. By the end of the year, we're gonna be in. if we're-
I thought last month it was
10
like
to
20.
That was last year, that's 2023 cycle, this is 2024. So this is through April of 2024. The one with the long list of 10 to 12 of them was for 2023, but those don't end until, I think there's a 90-day runoff.
Oh, okay, so it was the tail from,
Yeah, if you look at the,
and this one will just keep growing as we go. Okay,
well, it'd be nice if it wouldn't, but I think.
typically it does.
Yeah.
Got it, okay, so that's just a timing issue. And then the last question I had was about that page where there was a whole bunch of calculations. Why was that included? What was the significance of that? Kewaunee County self-funded the IBNR
Oh.
solutions.
That is one of the monthly reports they send, and what they said is, we know there's claims out there, people have gone to doctor, pharmacy, and the claims haven't come through yet. So this is an estimate of what that number is. It goes up and down a little bit each month. And at the end of the year, I take that number on here, it's a
So this is like
adjustment.
predictive tool for us
Yeah,
or something?
because our health insurance fund is fully approved, so people have gone to the hospital or their doctor in December, we need to make a good estimate of that, and this is by far the best estimate.
So IBNR stands for incurred but not received. Like we know that those charges are coming, or we know within a reasonable degree of certainty that their charges are coming within this window. And so because we want to be able to understand where the fund really stands, there's some it's projective on the one hand because we haven't got the claim, but the claims have already happened. It's because of the lag in that.
Now the question is, how do we use that when we get that information? Is it the IBNR? What significance? I mean, yes, it's great you guys calculated, but are we supposed to look at that relative to something else?
If we see this number growing, that means there's more use, there's more lag, and in the coming months, we're gonna see our claims going up.
But do I compare that to something on the other pages, or is it just simply?
The other pages, no,
So it's a,
previous month.
I'd have to keep previous months and compare that. It's gonna be unused.
Yeah, or I do that already just to see if there's anything out of line. I don't make an entry until December because it's this 12 times a year when we only do that next once a year. I mean, if you want to see the trend, I can send that out.
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm hoping a little bit, you send us information that
Yeah.
I can't make any sense of, so
Okay.
I'm just saying, do we want to look at those trends or
They
just
don't change very
ignore,
much. They
just
really
kind
don't.
of ignore it?
You know, that's one of those things, if something came up, I would say, oh, our IBNR has changed a lot this month, that's unusual. I may not have the answers right away, but we'd certainly be calling important to say, why is this different?
That's on you then,
Yeah.
because I don't have the data to compare.
No, I got it.
Okay, I got it. That's all I have.
Any other questions on the medical dental or financials? Otherwise, we'll move on to, the request from the, I don't know if this is a request, but it's approval for use of opioid funds in the sheriff's department. I mean, somebody would be here, but
Well, he did write a memo.
There's a memo.
He referenced,
Approve it in committee.
yeah, he did reference the approved uses that came with the settlements. I also have everything I know about the opioids and what we expect the settlements. That's the complete statement here, if anybody wants to see it. His request falls in the required uses. This is a request because right now it's in the opioid fund, so because it wasn't a part of the regular budget, it'd be transferring funds from, or it'd be increasing the budget or transferring funds depending on the uses. So it'd have to be approved by this committee. It's only $4,000. It wouldn't have, yeah. But because this wasn't a part of the existing budget, it would have. Just a quick overview of the opioid fund. We've got 104,000 in there as of the end of March. We've got a schedule. Some of the payments we have, there's a page in here where all the settlements and a few bankruptcies. There's one more that's been added now, Kroger, which is a pharmacy, and it's similar to Walmart. I don't know that we have them here. So everything we know so far, we're going to get well over 400,000. Only the first round, we have actually 18 years of payments scheduled out. The pharmacies and manufacturers, there are settlements. They're working on the actual payment schedules. We don't know exactly what we're getting from there, but we've got the 50 years payments. Kroger just settled. There's a couple of bankruptcies. That's probably the one time.
Should we be getting, I mean, if that money is starting to come in, the rules were fairly limiting on what we can use it for. Should we be getting from someone, a presentation on how to use those funds? We should be starting to look at having a concrete plan, or is Human Services working on this, that they're going to come up with things? I don't know, Gary, that's a question. So question, Paul or Jeremy.
So I have a fair amount of experience with this from my work with Brown County previously, where we did look at how to use the funds over time, and I had written a plan for certain events that were going to take about 10 years when I was there. Here, to my knowledge, there's the sheriff's interest in using the funds for the purpose that's before the committee today for mental health screenings for law enforcement who are involved in first responses to the epidemic. And I know that there's the intention for, or maybe the expense already happened with the wraparound house to be funded through opioid funds. So I guess that's a lot of words. Long story short, it does make sense to have a plan, not go willy-nilly once or two.
Well, this is gonna be quite a bit of money, and it seems to me that we should be kind of
Yes.
planning, so maybe this, it sounds like you maybe have more background on it than anybody else, that can kind of give a presentation. I mean, I don't know what committee this even, I think it probably starts here, because it's not just Human Services that would be involved. The sheriff's, department is obviously involved. I don't know. I don't know what other committees might potentially, so it probably needs to start here. And if we had a clear vision of how these funds would be used and where we might be looking, obviously we'd want to put them to use.
Sure. And what I can do, I think would be a good way to go forward is start pulling together department heads who may see access to that. I mean, you could see public health in addition to the ones you mentioned, parks. Sometimes there's need to respond and remove drug paraphernalia from parks, and then I'd be an expense with that. Or ways to kind of, how do we get proactive? How do we use the money to address the?
We've received very little information on it, which isn't inappropriate at this point. I mean, we just knew, we were told a little bit of what kind of money was coming, and we were given an indication of, what the restrictions will be and so forth, and that was fine at the time, but it would seem that we're at that point where we need to be looking a lot more.
As a committee, when we considered this, the question in the back of my mind was, is it appropriate? And the sheriff said he's gonna go talk to Paul, but I don't know if Paul has a final say on whether it meets the guidelines. I think there may be more of a legal check, and I don't think there's a step in the process where the sheriff is required to go talk to, say, David, to to make sure it's appropriate before he approaches the committee or.
Yeah, the sheriff in his good point, it is, I looked at the exhibit, it's exhibit E, I think, in the settlement terms. That would allow for something like this, but I think the bigger sentiment that I'm hearing is, let's get the affected department heads together. And come up with a coordinated plan and present that. To the board.
This is money we were told it was coming and we don't know much.
Well, I still am troubled by the idea that the sheriff will come with a very compelling story about he's gonna get a new radio for this. And he says it meets all the criteria. And I don't know where to say, well, we'll vote on that once we hear from corporate counsel. Because I don't know for a fact that he knows for a fact that what he's using it for is appropriate. And that's the piece that's missing for us. When we voted on that, it was like, I think there's more checks and balances in the system, but I don't think it's Paul's role to say it meets the.
And I think I was taking that sentiment when I jumped ahead to say we should have a coordinated plan because anything that meets the threshold to be in the plan would have been evaluated for that.
That's a pretty detailed plan. I mean, that's the risk, is you say we're gonna do these kinds of things here and these kinds of things, human services. But I think in the end, it comes down to specifics. The sheriff says, I want to go buy this particular thing, and it comes to the committee. And we have to approve it without knowing for sure that a check has been made for that particular, like $4,000 now. Who does that go through other than Paul? Is there an obligation that the sheriff go talk to corporate counsel before he brings that forward to make sure we don't get tripped up on an audit later on?
I haven't made that an obligation. I don't know if the sheriff asked that question or not. He did talk with me about it and I'm relatively familiar with. But if the board would like that, that's evaluated by corporation counsel to, limit or eliminate any future audit risk, we could make that a requirement.
Well, it's a general requirement for any grant, right? Eventually, you're gonna get audited in how you spend it.
Correct.
And somebody has to provide some guardrails on there, and it's some kind of language, right?
Correct, but if we're using the normal grant as the baseline, we wouldn't normally run the expense through corp counsel to make sure that it's in line with the terms of the grant. So it's kind of it's a risk benefit analysis. So, if we could make sure that we could have corporation counsel evaluate each thing, but practically speaking, is it always necessary? That's a decision.
And I'm not requesting that. As a committee, we heard the request that we don't know whether the other appropriate amount of checking to say that it is appropriate for those funds, and we're not gonna do that as a committee, I don't think.
Does it state in the request, where it's referencing the rules that were given to us?
On the very bottom, it talks about this one right here. And that document was provided when the opioid settlement started. So this one, like most grants,
Says here,
defined what it be used for. He referenced one of those.
it says if expenditure meets the requirements, exhibit E, part 3, other strategies, section.
So we
1.
didn't see that in the committee meeting.
I thought he said that.
He may have said it, he didn't like say this is where, so I didn't see a reference there.
Were you talking about that at the law enforcement committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw this.
So, yeah, I requested a memo be sent out to this committee. I
Right,
made the assumption he did that for law enforcement, but. he
no,
said
it was
verbally-
just in his,
No, it's in this.
So I guess I'm a little confused, but so far we've received 104,000 of opioid money.
170 something, wasn't it?
No, we, right now in the fund,
There's disbursements that are constantly coming, so that number changes very frequently.
So what the sheriff is requesting is of the money that's come in, he'd like to have $4,000 of that money to use.
And it says,
Okay.
he's got it in there that
It
it
says here, the county received $172,087 to be checks. 70,000 of that is for that one, correct?
yeah.
So we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about that big specific request, but then we're also talking about the bigger picture overarching experience.
so it's not first and pursuit.
As far as how the grants are usually written, the departments are pretty good at knowing, a lot of these are recurring. They're pretty good at knowing what terms they have to apply to and what, when they're applying for the grant, you know what the use of the grant is. This is a little bit different because it's settlement funds, but the use or the ability to use those funds is also outlined, and that language is fairly open to interpretation. Like, you know, they don't say you can use it for the following enumerated 2,386 things and nothing else. So, and that's intentional, right?
I would make a motion to approve the request, this request.
I would second that.
Here we have a motion and a second to approve the request for $4,000 for the wellness screening, to come from the opioid funds. Any further discussion?
Under discussion, if I may, Mr. Chair, I just looked up the reference. And the literal language from the settlement agreement is that the funding would be appropriately used for provision of wellness and support services for first responders and others who experience secondary trauma associated with opioid related emergency. So it's.
And then Jeremy can get us, you know, and both of you will be larger picture. Future.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to the,
The only thing I would add before we move on is that the department heads have had things where multiple departments have come together and said, we have this opioid funding, what is the plan, right? So those discussions have been happening within the county.
Which is good. It would just be nice to have that then shared.
And the only two real ideas that came out were the wraparound house, which was in this year's budget, and the current request for $4,000.
isn't there something in the regulations that the money has to be spent by a certain, or at least a plan provided by a certain time?
Not this one, no.
Not this one?
No.
Okay.
Uses is spelled out in the appendix, but there's no timeline.
We do have timelines for reporting requirements, so if we actually use the funds, then we put together a report that says, this is what we've used it for, which would allow them to
Well,
take a look at it.
we've certainly demonstrated in the past, we're good at spending money. We've got money available here, so let's get it done.
Okay, next on the agenda is approving the Homeland Security Exercise Grant Program for Emergency Management. I think there's something in here on that also.
Yeah, there's a memo from Tracy describing it, dollar amount, time period.
The committee hasn't approved it yet. We're doing it backwards.
Yeah, because of the timeline, and I said, well, if this committee wants to hear it first, they can approve it subject to public safety, which means next week.
Generally with grants, as long as there's not any matching money required, usually approval.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, move by Dan, second by Bill to approve the Homeland Security grant for emergency management. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Okay, I don't know about this next one here. Carry over for the corporation policy. You want to touch on that a little bit?
No, this was approved last year where it's approved for $10,000 for outside counsel having to do with the construction contract. I missed it with the other carryovers. I assumed this was done and paid for, but it wasn't. So if we don't do this, our councils will appear like they're, thousands of dollars over budget if we don't do that. So it's, I guess, housekeeping again, where the money was already approved, it wasn't spent till this year, and we'll just bring the budget to match that, and that's the end of it. And it's a small dollar amount, so in a bigger department, they wouldn't stand out, but Park Council being one of the smaller departments, 7,000 or, 9,000 over budget would probably stand.
I make a motion to approve the grant.
I'll second, yeah.
Been moved and seconded to approve the carryover from 23 to 24 for the corporation council budget.
The amount is what? Paul, is it 52?
The last number,
Yep.
$5,284.
Let's see, we're approving transfer. Okay.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you, folks. Okay, the vendor payments are posted. Any questions on vendor payments? Okay, they're not have a supplement.
It's-
Yeah, we're just waiting for them to, because you're gonna them.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay,
I
Anyway.
don't typically sign, so.
I would entertain a motion to approve the supplemental payroll as presented. Moved by Joe, second by Dan, approve the supplemental payroll, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, hearing none, motion carried. Okay, any other matters come before the committee?
One other, so, yep, you go first.
Two very quick things. The question was asked last month, I believe, about cyber insurance and would they pay the ransom? I looked it up and in the endorsement on the policy, it said they will pay the ransom if written, if approved by the insurance company in writing beforehand. So essentially, the insurance company decides, but it sounds like we have to would pay it. Number two, our insurance, property insurance will be coming for an appraisal of well, some or most of our buildings. I don't know that we've had this done ever, certainly not in my 9 years here. So when the building, the contents goes on the insurance, it goes on at the value at that point. Certain calculations are made to best guess the value if it would have to be replaced. Somebody coming on site, looking and doing a thorough appraisal for insurance purposes is going to start happening now every 3 to 5 years because, well, we've seen in the last couple of years, prices just go insane. I'm sure those estimates are probably off. This is a perfect timing for this. And last, the ELNA request for conduit bonds. The time frame they gave for that was probably July or August. And that happened like the day after our last meeting. So that is on the horizon. It sounds like that one is moving forward. So they will be.
And is there anything on that? I mean, Corporation Council has reviewed that. We had a long discussion at that board meeting.
That is the typical conduit that I think of and you think of and everybody else thinks of where they're using our tax exempt status to get a better rate. We are not co-signing on that in any way, shape or form. It will not appear in our financial statements. It will not go against our debt. This other one's different.
I know a lot of people were very, apprehensive on the elder one because it's so large and that kind of liability, if the county was somehow on the hook, that would be really be a major amount, but it doesn't, it's just been reviewed. I don't know what more can be told to people than it's been reviewed.
And we don't do this much. We had one from Pagels in 2012, I think it was, before I left. And in my time in Manitowoc, we had one. And the only thing I ever saw of it was a 2-sentence line footnotes in the financial statements. So there is no involvement with them once they're under that.
So you have, you have, experience with it.
Minimal.
Okay.
That's why,
That's why people are so apprehensive, is
Yeah.
because we're talking about it's a very big number and nobody seems to have a lot of familiarity with it.
And that's why we run.
Yes.
So that's why we go to outside counsel, specifically looks at that.
Okay.
Make sure.
That is what Quarles and Brady do. They do bond counsel. They don't do anything else. That's their business.
We had a number of them working with Bill Hardwood's business, but and then also with discuss labels. And those are all kind of buying, but city was not at the point for anything.
So it's no liability at all.
It's using our ability to get a
The
lower
Bud
interest rate.
Tussle one is indeed different. Sounds,
Go ahead and experience it.
and that's a matter where.
It sounds, yeah,
That's a matter where.
scary almost in a strange way.
Well, I mean, maybe not, but I mean, it is something that Corporation Council and Paul definitely need to give the board some background on and make sure that we,
Education 101.
well, I mean, it is different. It's a big amount. I mean, I think that the proposal looks like it could certainly have some benefits for the county, but so can't just, on my background or knowledge of these things, we can't vote.
I always get nervous when you're committing. Liability.
Correct, thank you. That's what I'm saying too. It's 30 years.
it seems,
I mean, it's probably a very, very low risk program. But never know.
I don't mean to speak for Paul, but when I hear, hey, let's take step one, we haven't talked about council, we haven't, we're gonna do this in 2 weeks, and you've never seen this thing before, these different moving parts, that to me,
June is not possible.
yeah, that's, it may be a great plan, and it may work out well for everybody. It's just gonna take some more time before.
And I don't know
before
if
I could be.
Was it clear what would happen if he said no?
They just do it.
I like that.
They would move on with the counties that have agreed.
So they wouldn't do any work here.
They would do, yeah. they would.
Okay,
It just, I mean, it's something that potentially has some pretty significant benefit to the county.
but I guess the question is, could it be bonded in a different way without using that specific vehicle?
Well, the other,
Still get the benefit.
right, well, and the other question I asked was that I put to Ross and Jeremy was, well, if we don't do this, these other companies with the BEAD funding, would they be interested in?
Well, I know companies like AT&T and Charter, they're gonna want, and other companies, they're gonna want a match because they can only fund so much money. But if they bid on something and they say they have to get to end mile and it ends up being that this guy's driveway is,
Look, but we have met with Charter on another project at one point, and they were willing to do it if they got the grant funding, they were willing to do it with no commitment at all from the county, but then they didn't get the grant funding.
right. Yeah, and this grant funding is basically just that there will be a request to the county for a match. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to match it. It just means that, they may bow out of the whole process and say that we're not gonna bid on that section because it's gonna be too costly to our company.
I mean, I
Things like
think there's
that.
going to be discussion amongst the supervisors because I have had very positive experiences with Bud Tussle, and I think the relationship has been very good for the county. I know that there are others that would feel differently, and I think some of that, unfortunate, or fair or unfair, is because of the problems that they have with one subcontractor that they eventually got rid of. So fair or unfair, there are some that don't share my.
Well, and a company like Bud Tussle is pretty unique when it asks to borrow money and then pay us points back in it, where companies like AT&T, Chart, they won't do that. They won't do it's upfront costs. It's like, we want $2 million, give it to us.
My question would be, can we short circuit the process and ask them that question right away about a conventional conduit versus this one? Yes, we'd lose the 600,000.
I think in the email this morning, the reason for this one was because the rates would be, would put it out of reach. Which, Anthony's looked through all that, but yes, if we sign on and if it's.
So it's this or nothing. And that's, I
It
just want to
sounds
make
like
sure.
if we don't, the rates would be too high for them to get the bond on their own.
Well, this is something that we need. This is another matter where we need to.
He did say too, just don't forget that, he did say that it's not gonna be all $250 million all at once, they have other issue dates. And so this timeline is to get the issue for us in, let's say September issue.
I don't want to keep us here all day.
The other interesting thing on this issue is that I'm assuming that Frozen Brady is familiar with this type of bonding
Well,
also.
they have to.
Yeah,
Versus,
so that's kind of where I was coming from. And this is the thing that I haven't dealt with before or seen, so I would
Yeah,
reach out to.
well, we need background.
they can advise, it's risky,
Right.
what's.
And Portland Ray is on our side of the table, Bush Blackwell is on the council side of the table, we want to hear from our.
Yes, obviously. I mean, this is like buying a car, you don't need to call your wife. Sign now, discuss later. I mean,
How much you're willing to spend on a monthly payment? Well, this guy or this for one.
yeah. Well, anyway, the one other thought I had is, if I go back just very briefly to the campground. I wonder if it wouldn't, be beneficial for us if, maybe the administrator or somebody would, go out and and look at this and see, evaluate that the progress looks, that there's progress being made and that it's acceptable. I mean,
I'll take a long conscience. I haven't seen it since it was,
Yeah.
taxi.
Going off that, wasn't the intent of the penalty to make sure they actually proceeded with the campground and not use it to some other advantage?
Yes.
So if we look at the original intent, they are meeting the original.
They
intent.
are.
So I don't know why there
And
was
they're-
much of a discussion.
Trouble,
And they're-
some issue.
They're straight up, I think. I mean, I just think that it's better if we, have a delegation go out and verify that, hey, yes, this is moving along, and I think that'd be good since the county is involved.
I don't doubt that their intent is to do exactly what they said.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They clearly, had to deal with
COVID,
bigger issues and COVID, where,
COVID killed them.
you couldn't get a contract out, you couldn't get parts, you couldn't get any of that stuff. So, yeah, it's gonna take longer. And if they get there, I think the end result is still what we're looking for with yours.
still in the county's interest.
But I think if they come up with reasonable proposals and timelines down the road, if you work with them, I think that. Yes.
Working in that direction.
Okay, very good. Anything else? Okay, next meeting, is gonna be Friday, July 5th.
People better make sure I'm here.
Now, could we look at,
See, it's like, work with big, a lot of people leave, but I don't know.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Well, that's a quorum.
that's a forum. Okay, if we could we look ahead to August? I have a conflict on the first Friday in August, the second. I was wondering if you could move the finance meeting to Thursday, August 1st.
I mean, I can't guarantee I would be able to make the Thursday, but hopefully by then we'll.
Steve should be around and. Okay,
So they
well, just down the road, let's look at our August meeting. It'll be on Thursday, August 1st. Okay, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
make a motion to adjourn.
We don't, second, Dan, to adjourn, all in favor? Aye. Motion,